But we're going to start with a crackdown on crime in America's capital city. So President Trump ordered a federal takeover to fight Washington, D.C.'s crime and homelessness. He is sending hundreds of National Guard troops to D.C., sending FBI agents to patrol the streets, even having U.S. Marshals oversee the operation. Now, President Trump didn't pull any punches in his announcement, that's for sure.
Our capital city has been overtaken by violent gangs and bloodthirsty criminals, roving mobs of wild youth, drugged-out maniacs and homeless people, and we're not going to let it happen anymore. It's embarrassing for me to be up here. You know, I'm going to see Putin. I'm going to Russia on Friday. I don't like being up here talking about how unsafe and how dirty and disgusting this once beautiful capital was.
Now, not surprisingly, liberals, they push back, saying, you know, violent crime hit a 30-year low in the city last year. The numbers show it's lower in a wide range of categories. It's true, including armed assault, homicide, sex crimes. However, the murder rate in D.C. has more than doubled since 2012. So here's the question. What do the men and women who are actually on the front lines of crime in D.C. think about the federal takeover? Who better to ask than the chairman of the D.C. Police Union, Gregg Pemberton. Thank you so much for coming on. Really good to see you. Okay, what is the reaction from the men and women in blue? And from a practical, logistical point of view, I don't think we're talking about this enough. What is the day-to-day? What does the National Guard do when we talk about federal police force? How do things change? Do they have the training to make stops and counter crime in the city? What are we talking about logistically?
Well, first of all, we completely agree with the president that crime in the District of Columbia is out of control and something needs to be done about it. I think it's also important to understand how we got here, which is that back in 2020, the D.C. City Council passed a mountain that handcuffed police officers, made it impossible to charge criminals, exposed cops to administrative, civil, and criminal liability, even when they did their jobs properly. And since then, we're now down 800 sworn positions. Our authorized strength is 4,000 sworn officers. We currently have 3,180, so more than 800 vacancies here on the police department. The way that the department makes up for that shortage is through 2 million hours of mandatory overtime, which just adds to the burnout and the attrition rate here in the city. And this is the main reason why we can't get a handle on crime ourselves, is because of this legislation that the council has passed and the combination of shortage of police officers. So we welcome any help we can get. To answer your question, the National Guard, I think there are limitations in what they can do from a policing standpoint. I mean, they are authorized to make arrests. That typically happens in the nature of a civil unrest, some sort of protest that turns into a riot. I don't envision that the National Guard will be making traffic stops or conducting shooting or stabbing investigations, but they will be there establishing a presence and letting people in these neighborhoods know that there are folks with law enforcement capabilities active in those areas, and they can always report directly to police officers as to what they see or what they're observing, which does lighten the load for the patrol officer, who can then focus on other more important issues. The federal law enforcement agents that come in, similarly, I think they're going to need a little bit of hand-holding from the local cops to show them where and what's going on in these neighborhoods. But I do think they'll have a big impact on actually being able to make arrests and do investigations. So we welcome all of this help. I think the concern that we have from the rank and file is that we know it's temporary. This authority that Trump invoked is only valid for 30 days. And at the end of that 30 days, as you mentioned in the intro, has to be established by Congress if it wants to go any further than that. So, you know, we don't want to be left holding the bag when 1,000 National Guardsmen and 500 federal officers move on, and now we're here. So we're hoping that during this time frame that the White House and Congress can identify the problems, and we're happy to help them with that, and maybe we can go back and repeal some of this legislation that the council passed.
So listen, the skeptics, right, the critics, they are going to hit you with the why now. Of all times, why now? And I'm going to show you some stats here, because if we talk about crime being out of control in D.C., there are stats from the D.C. police showing a dramatic decrease in violent crime this year. So 26% down for violent crimes, 28% down in robbery, 20% down in armed assault, 12% down in homicide, 50% down in sex crimes. Now, Washington, D.C. had a scourge of carjackings in 2023 last year, fell back below to 2022 levels. You have murders in the district that rose throughout the president's first term. Homicides right now, I say just, but 15% above the 20-year average. Question is, out of all times to do this, And I know there's a lot of people who say, is this a distraction? We'll get into the politics in a second, but why now if you're looking at these numbers?
I think it's a good question, and there's two answers to that. One, we have a lot of questions about the accuracy of these crime stats that they're reporting. First of all, 2023 was one of the most violent years we've seen in the past 3 decades. So if that's what we're using as our framework or our baseline to say, oh, the crime is down, frankly, I'm not sure that we should be taking victory laps to come down from 30-year highs. But we do have concerns about the legitimacy of these. We know that from local reporting here in the district that it's been uncovered that a commander is under investigation for manipulating crime stats. He's been accused of going back into police databases and changing felonies to misdemeanors to keep those numbers down. What we believe is happening is that this is a pattern of practice within the command staff, and he's certainly not doing this maliciously on his own, but this is what is being ordered from the very top to make sure that these stats stay low. In addition to that, I know it's anecdotal, but our members report to us that they're being told on the scene to take classifications for lesser offenses. So a robbery turns into a theft, a carjacking turns into a stolen auto, and on and on. So I'm not entirely convinced that the numbers that we're seeing are accurate, but even if they are, I don't think we should be cheering on minor decreases from 30-year highs. I think there's much more to be done. As you mentioned, in 2012, we had 88 homicides, and now people are trying to normalize 200. I don't think that's right. I think we should be trying to get these numbers down to 0 or as close to 0 as we can get them.
Am I wrong that the mayor has, as we were talking about, a careful, tepid response to this? She seems almost deferential to the president here. Now, she did push back on the crime statistics, suggesting maybe this is not necessary, but I was talking about it with Elizabeth. There's only legally so much she can do to challenge the president's authority. What can you tell us about her response to this?
This is the mayor's disposition on this issue. She has always been an avid supporter of law enforcement. Even in 2020, when activists came out of the woodwork demanding to defund the police, demanding to limit the scope and size of the police department, responsibilities of police officers, she has always said, and she has always been on the same page, that we need to have the proper number of officers and they need to be properly trained, and she has never wavered from that. I think she probably understands that there are problems within the police department, and that unfortunately it's gotten to the point where maybe we do need some help. So she's managed that messaging pretty well, and I commend her for doing that. I'd like to see her go further and say that the police department really does need to be fixed, but in this environment, that's difficult.
Yep, we'll see who it changes or what happens. D.C. Police Union Chairman Gregg Pemberton, thanks so much for coming on, and thank you for your service.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.